Okay, so the basic purpose of this video is not to teach you guys how to build a room. This soundproof room is pretty simple. It's freestanding. It's basically a box. It's 10 feet by 10 feet by 8 feet high, which is what fits in my garage, but you could make it as a soundproof enclosure for your machines, or you could just, build the whole room. I was trying to be economical. I didn't have to put all of my equipment in the soundproof room, just the real noise-making stuff. So I built a box, and I built a set of like barn door hinges, basically just a rail and some wheels, which I'll give you a little bit more information on later. I made some hinges just to dress it up. And basically the soundproof room, the doors just slide to the side. This is more about getting my equipment in and out than it is about, again, the soundproof room. But basically it's a box, and it's freestanding. It's not bolted to the floor. It just sits on top of the garage floor, and it's self-contained, and it keeps the noise in. The hardest part about doing this was finding out what to really use. People talk about using all kinds of stuff, but I found with a little research that, sound engineers use a lot of different materials, and that's what I'm going to cover in the first part of this video. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the materials I used. And I'm at this website, Trademark Soundproofing. Before I get started, I don't have a product placement relationship with these guys. I'm not getting any free products. It's just that they provided me some really excellent tech support when I was trying to do this, where I wasn't getting that elsewhere. And so I figured I'd pay it forward by using their site to show you the products. You can buy this stuff in a lot of places, but these guys were reasonable, and they really helped me with the tech support end. Anyway, so let's start with the mass-loaded vinyl. I use the 2-pound mass-loaded vinyl because I'm in a residential neighborhood with an HOA, and I have a really loud plasma engraver. That engraver makes a horrendous amount of noise, and I wanted to be sure that my machine would be quiet. So I went with the 2-pound. Could I have used the 1-pound? I don't know. I just wanted to make sure that if I was doing this once, I'd, do it right. So anyway, when you're figuring out the square footage, you have to remember that you've got the wall with the insulation in it, and then on both sides of the wall, you've got mass-loaded vinyl. In fact, you have everything that we're going to talk about because the walls are mirrored. And you've also got it on the inside of the ceiling and the outside of the ceiling, so that when you're figuring out your square footage, you gotta take all that into consideration. If cost is a concern, then you can always build an enclosure around your machine. Okay, now we'll talk about the isolation clips, and I'll quickly go to this picture here because it shows you my room is built out of 2x4. So like this, the isolation clip is screwed to the 2x4. That allows the clip to float. Then it's got this hat channel that clips into it. You basically put an array of these clips, and then you clip the hat channel into it, and then you screw the sheetrock through into the hat channel, and I'll show you that in the next picture here. This is the hat channel, and they've got a picture of how it all goes up on the wall. Showing the 2x4 wall. You've got the mass-loaded vinyl being shown on the other side. You've got hopefully the Roxul Safe and Sound, which I'm going to talk about, insulation, and then you've got the first layer of sheetrock screwed to the hat channel. Now, if you're watching any of these videos on how to install this stuff, they tell you to gap the bottom and the top and the corners. You don't want a tight fit here. You want to have a common gap so that basically that sheetrock is free flowing. It doesn't touch the floor, it doesn't touch the other walls, and it doesn't touch the ceiling, because all that will do is transfer the sound from one piece of sheetrock into the other. So you want to keep these things isolated. That's the whole point in using isolation clips and the hat channel. Now I used a double layer of sheetrock. So basically, the sheetrock that was screwed to the hat channel, I put another layer, and I used 5/8 sheetrock on top of that. But the way that you fasten it is using this green glue dampening compound. So you kind of like liquid nails. You squeeze it out onto the wall in a pattern, whatever you choose, and then you basically just press the sheetrock into the green glue. And of course, because it's floating on the floor, you got to shim it on the bottom so it doesn't just drop down, and then leave it there to dry. If you had to, I guess you could put a couple of screws in, and not tight because you don't want to compress the green glue too much. And then you can let it dry, and then it just stays where it is. It hardens or softens, or however it works, like a rubbery consistency. And it allows the outer layer of sheetrock to move. The inner layer of sheetrock moves because of the isolation clips, and then it hits the mass-loaded vinyl and then into the Roxul Safe and Sound, which I'll talk about next. Okay, this is the Roxul Safe and Sound. Now, I bought this at Lowe's. They have it at Home Depot and a whole bunch of other places. Basically, it's not like regular insulation, so just don't replace it with regular insulation. It is a spun rock wool batting, and it actually absorbs the sound. So what happens, and again, I'm not a sound engineer, is the sound goes, whatever sound makes it through the double sheetrock and the mass-loaded vinyl, it's now kind of trapped in there between the two layers of mass-loaded vinyl, and almost like bouncing back and forth, and it gets absorbed into the Roxul Safe and Sound until it's gone, pretty much. Again, not a sound engineer, but all I know is this stuff works. So use the Roxul Safe and Sound, and then I'll go into the next part here. Okay. From Roxul, you see this stuff, rock wool. Now, what's the difference between the Roxul and the rock wool, and what do you use these for? The Roxul you use in place of regular insulation. The rock wool, because it's kind of like almost a foam board type consistency, it's hard. You cut it with a serrated knife, and it keeps its form. And I used it to create the air traps, which I'll show you next. But this stuff was perfect. What I did was I used the rock wool comfort board, and I cut it to size, again, which I'll show you in the next thing. And then I wrapped it in a speaker cloth, acoustical speaker cloth, so that the sound could travel through the cloth. It keeps the Roxul from shedding and all the stuff flying around, because there's air passing through these, so you don't want that stuff flying into your shop. So I wrapped it in the fabric, and I just sprayed it with a liquid adhesive so that it would stick, and it just folded the acoustical cloth over it, and it worked great. It's been there 5 years, no problem. Okay, one last thing before I go into the construction, of the sound trap for the air is acoustical caulk. Now, as I said, you kind of leave a space in between the floor and the ceiling. You don't want the sheetrock touching. You don't want a tight, fit. I used a piece of sheetrock, basically 5/8, so it had a gap. At the end of each wall, there was a 5/8 gap, and at the floor and ceiling, there was a 5/8 gap, so that the sheetrock can move around in all directions. And then what I did was I filled those crevices with the acoustical caulk, which fills that in. You use that around any outlets that you might have or anything that's passing through the sheetrock. You want to seal it with this acoustical caulk. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the soundproof room baffle, the thing that allows air in and out of the room without allowing any sound, because I said if air escapes, sound escapes. But this traps the sound in this rock wool maze that I created. And I got this idea from the internet quite some time ago. I tried to find the video so I could credit the guy, but I just can't find it anywhere. But anyway, it showed how to build a maze. And I found the materials and did the design myself and how I did it, but I wanted to credit the guy, and I couldn't. So I'm sorry. But anyway, I built the box. It's basically 2 feet by 4 feet by 1 foot, okay? And then I lined that box, top and bottom and all the sides, with inside with the rock wool. Okay, I also covered the box in mass-loaded vinyl so that it would hold all the sound in. It would trap it in the box, and the only way to get for the sound to go would be through the maze, and then therefore it would be dissipated. But as you can see, it's a pretty simple design. The rock wool all of the rock wool is wrapped in speaker cloth so that none of the rock wool will kind of flake off and wind up blowing into my shop. It's been there 7 years. I haven't had any problems with it. And I basically just glued the top and bottom and the 4 sides. Now, well, how did I get these to stay in place? That was pretty easy. I used 1/8 metal rod, and I cut it, since the thing is 12 inches high, I cut the metal rod 11.5 inches high. So this way I could stake these in place in 2 positions. There's 2 metal stakes that penetrate the uprights, and they wind up in the bottom, and then they stick out of the top. So when you put the top piece on of rock wool, everything stays in place, and then you cover it with the plywood. And of course, you've had the 6-inch holes cut out, and you insert the PVC pipe, a nice tight fit, and seal it with acoustical caulk. These don't take long to build, and like I said, they're very effective in eliminating the sound. You can stand with your ear right next to mine, and with all the noise going on, and you don't hear a thing coming out of the side of this, so it's really good. And I wish that I could have shown when I was actually building the room and building these boxes, but I was so busy trying to move into the house and move into the shop and get all my equipment organized so I could start working again. I really had no time to stop and take pictures or shoot videos, which are a big thing for me because I keep them for memories. Anyway, but I figured I can show you here how to make it, and it's pretty simple. So I'll move on to the next topic now. Okay, well, I'll wrap up this video then with just a quick look around the room so you can see the soundproof baffle in place here. It's mounted up in the corner, and I use it to attach a bunch of stuff to. This way it doesn't take up much space. And then the other one is actually on the other end of this fume extractor line. So this is the out, and it runs up through the ceiling, and that's where that other soundproof box is mounted to the ceiling. And then this is the inlet, which obviously the opening is on the other side in the garage. And that's it. So it keeps all this really loud noise-making equipment quiet. And I've even done something to the compressor. I've added a silencer, which is kind of based on the soundproof room baffle. And I'll cover that if anybody wants any insight on it. Just leave a comment. But it does substantially quiet down the compressor too, so it keeps the room even more quiet. And the whole trick for me is that when you're standing at the street in front of my house, that the noise level is no louder than an outdoor air conditioner, and it's not. In fact, it's quieter. So I'm able to run my equipment all hours of the night without anybody bothering me. So that's it. I hope this helps you guys. And if you got any questions, leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks. Okay, so now let's talk about soundproof room a little bit. I'm in a residential neighborhood with an HOA, so all my noise-making equipment has to be kind of isolated. So I'm going to show you what's in here. You can hear the difference as soon as I open the door, but I turned it off so I can go through the equipment with you.